Reborn 1985, the day. My husband rented a house for a widow. I walked away and changed my life. The rain poured heavily that evening, its rhythm pounding against the windows of our quiet home. I was sitting in the living room, knitting a scarf for the coming winter, when Daniel, my husband, walked in. His face looked troubled, his shoulders tense. I put down my knitting and asked, "What happened?" "You look worried." Daniel hesitated for a moment, then sighed deeply. "Clara, I need to talk to you about something. There's a woman, Margaret. She's a widow, recently lost her husband, and she's in a terrible situation. She has nowhere to go, and I thought we could help." I paused, not expecting this. "Help? How?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I'm thinking of renting her a house," he said, his tone earnest, "just until she gets back on her feet." Daniel had always been a kind man, someone who would go out of his way to help others. It was one of the reasons I fell in love with him. So even though the idea caught me off guard, I nodded. "If you think this is the right thing to do, then I'll trust you." Over the next few days, Daniel arranged everything. He found Margaret a small but cozy house not too far from ours. He took care of the deposit, the furniture, and even bought groceries for her. At first, I admired his generosity. Margaret visited once to thank us personally. She was a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, with soft features and a quiet demeanor. I felt sorry for her loss and told her that she was welcome to let us know if she needed anything. But as the weeks passed, things began to change. Daniel started spending more time outside. He said he was helping Margaret settle in, taking care of her paperwork and ensuring she was comfortable. At first, I didn't question him. I trusted him completely. But then, little things began to bother me. He started coming home late, distracted and distant. Conversations that once flowed naturally now felt strained. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, I asked casually, "How is Margaret doing?" "She's adjusting," Daniel said, not meeting my eyes. "It's not easy for her, losing everything like that." I nodded, but felt a strange unease settle in my chest. Something wasn't right. The turning point came when I overheard a phone conversation. It was late at night, and Daniel was in his study. His voice was soft, almost affectionate, as he spoke. "Don't worry, Margaret. I'll take care of it. You don't need to stress about anything," he said. I felt my heart sink. Who was this man I had trusted with everything? Was he simply being kind? Or was there something more to his relationship with Margaret? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the doubt began to gnaw at me. Over the next few weeks, I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things. But then I found receipts, payments for utilities, groceries, and other expenses, all for Margaret's house. When I confronted Daniel about it, he grew defensive. "She needs help, Clara. Why can't you understand that?" he snapped. "I do understand," I replied, trying to stay calm. "But you're spending so much time and money on her. Have you even thought about how this makes me feel?" "Not everything is about you, Clara," he said coldly, and that was when I realized how far apart we had grown. The final straw came when I visited Margaret's house unannounced. I wanted to see for myself what was going on. Margaret opened the door, surprised to see me. Her house was well furnished, with little touches of comfort that Daniel must have arranged. As I looked around, I noticed something. A framed photo of Daniel and Margaret on a shelf. It wasn't just kindness. This was personal. When I confronted Daniel that evening, he didn't deny it. He didn't admit to an affair, but he didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than his words. "I'm done," I said, my voice trembling. "I've sacrificed everything for you, Daniel. My dreams, my career, my identity, and this is how you repay me." "Clara, don't do this," he pleaded. "I never meant to hurt you." But it was too late. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was nothing more than an afterthought. The next morning I packed my bags and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town and started rebuilding my life. At first it was hard. I cried myself to sleep many nights, questioning whether I had made the right decision. But as time passed, I began to heal. I found a job at a local library, a job I had always dreamed of, but had given up for Daniel. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. Slowly, I rediscovered the parts of myself that I had lost. Months turned into years, and I flourished in ways I never thought possible. I held my first art exhibition, made new friends, and even traveled to places I had always wanted to see. I realized that my happiness didn't.